Hello, I'm Chris Flisher, and welcome to Turning of the Wheel, an intelligent, lively discussion on astrology, art, and adventure. Timing is everything, and as the great wheel turns, we are best prepared when we are best informed. Join me as I explore the current planetary alignments and offer insights for coping with change. Educational, informative, enlightening, the Turning of the Wheel is a welcome pause in your daily swirl of constant change. Through intelligent discourse, inspired guests, and educational segments, I will help to enlighten your knowledge of astrology and guide you to accept change as the great wheel of life turns. Call in with your questions and speak with some of the greatest visionaries in the time-tested practice of astrology. Turning of the Wheel, Astrology, Art, and Adventure with Chris Flisher, each week on Turning of the Wheel podcast. Welcome to Turning of the Wheel. It's so great to have you on.
Thank you, Chris. I really appreciate you having me on here. Yeah. And I have to say I'm really excited because talk about an auspicious day. You know, because of my relationship with Deborah, I know something about my chart. And my sun is in Gemini. My rising sign is Gemini. And my moon is in Gemini. And I found out that my moon was 18 degrees Gemini, which is happening with what you just brought up. Yeah. And when you just talked about to look back 6 months to what happened 6 months ago I actually moved from New Jersey to South Carolina. So that's I'm just buzzing here.
So do you find your new energy to be where you are in your new spot to be, really coming alive? Has it shifted your view of things? I mean, when you make a change like that, it can be pretty profound.
It is, and I knew when I first came to Charleston in 2007, it just spoke to me. I mean, I've traveled a lot, or in many places around the world, and I just knew that there was something mystical about here. And the best way that I can describe it over the past 6 months is because I am who I am. I mean, I'm a medium, and it's not just what I do, it's who I am. I find that the barriers, let's say between the realms, have just slowly dissolved, and I find myself it's hard to get from point A to point B when I'm driving.
So you're feeling very positive, and you're feeling very positive where you are?
It is. It's very positive. There's also so much history here. You know, they've gone out of their way to retain the history of the area, and it's funny because they're still talking about the Civil War. Even though it's long gone. But yeah, there's just this ambiance, this history, this spirituality that just really calls to me, and I absolutely love it.
Do you have a feeling in your inner self that you perhaps have been there before? Is there a sense of deja vu to you? I mean, you mentioned that it spoke to you. Do you think that you may have spent a past life there at some point?
I think, yeah, and it's interesting speaking about past lives. I think this is really important because even though we call them past lives, they're not really in the past. The only linear plane is the one that we're on right now. So when we talk about past lives, we really are living many lives simultaneously. And when we have a theme that our soul wants to explore, we will explore every facet of that theme in many lifetimes simultaneously. So do I believe I have some connection here? Absolutely. I haven't really looked into it. I've had some other lifetimes come up, one in the 1920s, 1927. I just had another one I explored the other day in Persia, another one where I was a gypsy, but I haven't really explored. What I do tend to find here is that when I'm walking the streets of Charleston, which I do all the time, I can just go into that zone and I can see people. I actually had a conversation with a soul who had crossed over, and he told me his name and what his whole situation was. And after I was done, I researched it and I found out that there is actually what I believe is a descendant of his living there with the same name. So that was kind of cool. But I'll explore that one day. I haven't done it yet.
Yeah. It's funny because when you mentioned the South, when I was growing up as a kid, I was fascinated by the whole history piece of the Civil War. And I spent hours and hours and hours consuming books on the Civil War. It became sort of a personal obsession. And I went down to the South later on in my life when I was much older, and I was in the Mississippi Delta, and I really feel as if I had been there before. It was very much the same sort of experience that you just spoke of. And
So it's interesting because, I think you're absolutely right about the dimension of time and how we experience and where we are and in that plane of time. And I think that's what is one of the fascinating things, because you obviously are able to sort of tap into that stream of time and find out different information about things by tapping into that. You literally have your antenna up very high, I guess, in order to get that information.
I think more so about this area is not so much whether or not I had a past life here. This area seems to be under this, let's say, one time I was taken to an ethereal realm, okay? And it was over this area. And I've connected, I have evolved, as we all are. We're all evolving. And over the past 10 years, I have evolved from just speaking with ones who've passed on, to connecting with archangels, to connecting with spirit guides, to connecting with ascended masters. And I actually connected with the energy of Saint Germain, who, truthfully, I didn't know much about until they came to me and said, I'm Saint Germain, and I'm speaking to you, and you better listen. Mm-hmm. But so it's that energetic connection to that energy. But what I find here is that there's a higher realm of awareness, that we are all connected through unity consciousness. Okay, when our soul projects, slips into a body, that's where we become separate. And when we are outside of our body, we're all connected. We have that unity consciousness, and I find that what I'm able to do is project out of my body and just tap into that consciousness. And more so, what I found just recently, which I think has to do with the accelerating energies and the rising vibrations on the planet as a whole, is that there's no distinction between someone who's crossed, who would be like, your grandfather or your brother or your mother, to all of a sudden I'm connecting with John Lennon the other day, just because I happened to look and see, oh, this is the day John Lennon died. And as I was walking on my walk, all of a sudden I thought to myself, I wonder what he thought of his death. And I immediately connected to his energy, and he said to me, like my life was big, my death was big, I went out with a bang. And he started laughing because literally and figuratively he went out with a bang.
And that's very typical of him. He was very wry. He had a very cynical side to him, which I think, speaking about the concept of death, he would be one who would sort of embrace that as sort of a new dimension, a new experience. Obviously, the way he went and the people he left behind probably left an impact on him. But very, very, very interesting kind of conversation that you have. Where do you see, when you're picking up this sort of this vibe, for lack of a better word, where do you see things going? I mean, we have a lot of the elevation of the energy is definitely increasing. There's no question in my mind. I see a great deal of activity happening around the ingress of Neptune into Pisces for the first time in 168 years, which is going to indicate a much more heightened sense of spirituality and consciousness amongst all people. What do you pick up as a general theme when you're sort of out surfing around in the
there's absolutely no doubt in my mind that we are coming together. We are all plugging into this consciousness. It's as if we have been put to sleep, as if parts of our DNA have been unplugged, as if we've been covered with a veil. And that was our choice, so that we could experience duality, living in the third dimension. But now it's like we have come to this alignment where, and it's obvious all over the world, everywhere people are feeling the same things. And it's not about one religion, one government. It's about freedom, being able to live as is our birthright, in abundance. So I really, really feel that if people can kind of hang on to their seats, because it has been a roller coaster ride, stay positive and understand that you manifest your thoughts. So I believe we are really coming into a time of really big transition. And the biggest message I keep getting over and over and over, especially about myself, because when I hear things like, okay, John Lennon, who I had a conversation with for like almost an hour, normally I wouldn't even bring that up because I would think, oh, people are going to think I'm crazy or it's notoriety. But now I understand that we are all coming to that place where the veil is literally going to drop. Mm-hmm. We are going to be able to connect with each other in telepathic ways. We're going to be able to connect with spirits who have higher vibrations. So I think it's all good.
I do too, and I try to emphasize that very often with people when I do readings, because so many people come to me with a sense of trepidation. And I think that is just because of the unknown. But I always try to phrase that. I say, listen, jump and the net will appear, because we're really at a time when the potential is enormously profound for making significant changes in a very optimistic, positive manner. This is not something to run and hide from. This is the time to really open up further.
Right. I love that phrase, too, jump and the net will appear. Well, we've been so programmed and controlled through fear. I mean, that is how we are controlled. We are controlled through fear and chaos. Mm-hmm. So when you understand that you are safe to really love yourself and live in joy. And the more we live in joy, and the more we kind of grab onto that joy and understand that all of these situations that have been set up or that we've set up for ourselves are temporary, they will pass. And I keep telling people, just hang on to that joy, because the powers that be are not going to be able to control us for very much longer. And then we're going to be like, I can breathe again, and now we're actually in charge of our lives. So I say, what are you going to do with your life? What are you going to do to help yourself and to help others?
Yeah, that's a great way to look at it too, and I feel very much the same way. And I think we're seeing it everywhere. We see it with Occupy Wall Street. We see it in Red Square, where we see it all throughout the Arab countries. Everybody is sort of had it, and it's almost as if it's not that. And we have been distracted, we have been misled, we have been fed a message of fear, and this goes back hundreds of years. I mean, there's been huge organizations that's constantly fed us this stream of fear. So it's not so much that we're wrong or that we're silly or that we're like lemmings who have been guided wrong. It's a habit that we have to break, and we can break the habit. We do have the ability within ourselves to make new habits. It takes 2 weeks, roughly 2 to 3 weeks, to establish a new routine. If we can start thinking differently about what is to come and where we're going, we can make an enormous impact.
And what I love about astrology, too, is the way it kind of gives you this roadmap where if you said, okay, 3 weeks from now, something is affecting something, Mars is in something, I'm not too savvy with the astrology, but in 3 weeks' time, this is going to happen. And then when something happens, you can say, okay, it was expected, I was ready for it, and I understand why. It's not just this. Things don't happen just by chance. There is a bigger picture and a divine plan going on that we're all a part of. But it's important to understand that collectively we create our world, collectively. Yes. So the more we understand, the more information we have, the more tools we have, like astrology, then we are able to kind of go through these transition in an easier way.
Mm-hmm. And it's interesting because, Deborah and I talk quite frequently about this, and, we always defer to the fact that astrology resonates with us because we sort of have that mechanical kind of mind that sort of is always sort of doubts and questions and wants a little more validity. And what astrology does is it does provide that scientific piece, because the degrees and the angles and the arcs that are within the astrology chart are really accurate. And when you see them come to life and you see the roadmap begin to open up before you, and you get instant validation when we look at our events in our lives, it's very hard to discount. And your talents are a little bit different because you're tapping into a different kind of medium. You're sort of, when I use that expression of sort of, your antenna is up high and you're receiving, I think that's a very appropriate kind of metaphor for the way that you receive information and the way that you operate. And you sort of, if you don't pick up things, you don't pick up things, but if you do, they certainly come through, don't they?
Right. It's like being a channel. You're tuning into a vibration, and when that channel is tuned in really well, it all kind of just flows through. But very much like you, I enjoy validation, and for myself, I can be very skeptical. I like to know that what's coming to me is real, and I'm always asking for messages of validations, not just for the people I read, but for myself.
Yes.
What's interesting is I keep going back to this John Lennon just because it was very profound. And one of the first things he said to me was, okay, dear Daria, look at Dear Prudence. And I know Dear Prudence was a song, and I maybe could remember like 2 lines of it or something. But one thing that I do every single day is I go out in my yard. As soon as I get up, I open myself up to the beauty, the grandeur of the day. I look at the sky. I turn around in a circle. I look at the sun. I see if I can see any UFOs hanging out. I'm always like thankful and grateful. And when I looked at the lyrics to Dear Prudence, it says, "The sun is up, the sky is blue. Open your eyes, see the sunny skies." And the other thing too is one of the first guides that I was able to identify was named Daisy. And one of the lines in the song says, "The clouds will be a daisy chain." So to me, I was like, thank you. That way I know that I'm not speaking with someone who is masquerading.
And those clues are they're sometimes subtle, but they're there. And that's what I find to be validating. Sometimes we expect the clues to be right smack in our face, but this really is it's sort of a puzzle in some ways, that we find the pieces and they do fit. And when they fit, it's remarkable. I mean,
it is.
I get goosebumps when those kind of things happen. And
I say it's like, sometimes it's like playing charades. Sometimes it's very, very clear, and sometimes it's like playing charades. What's interesting is this morning before we began, I asked him, because I've just seemed to have developed this ability, I guess, where I can immediately just tap in if they are there. And I tell people, when you're thinking of someone on the other side, just by you thinking of them, it attracts their energy. And I was asking him about you, if there was anything specific about you, and he brought up the lyrics from a song, JoJo. Get Back, that song. I just want to share that with you.
Oh, yeah,
and a white guitar. So I don't know if that means anything to you, but I was supposed to share that with you, so
that's interesting. Well, the thing about that is that John Lennon was always an incredibly important figure in my life, and I can't quite explain my relationship to him, because people often wonder why. Because when I mention him, he died the same year as my father died. My father died very unexpectedly in January of 1980, and then John Lennon died in December of 1980. And I felt the same sort of impact when they both died, and which I thought was unusual, because you'd think that your father would have a greater impact. But I felt so close to John Lennon, and his message and everything about him just resonated with me so much that when he died, I felt the same vacuum, the same amount of grief that I felt for my own father. And I thought that was kind of, because I never met John Lennon.
Right.
And to have that impact, I mean, I fell down on the floor. I was crying the same way I did for my own father. And that's just, he was a very powerful figure for me. So
I believe that there are people who come into our lives, whether they come in physically in front of us or whether we are influenced by them. And I think his artistic sensibilities influenced so many people, but we have a connection, we have a soul contract that our lives are going to be influenced by certain people, whether it's for an instant, whether it's for a week, a year, a lifetime. We make these soul contracts, and it's kind of like they turn something on within us. And I think there's some kind of artistic connection that you... what I'm picking up from your energy is being a very sensitive and artistic soul, and that there's also something about lamenting lost loves. But I think that's what it is, that we are. That's why sometimes we feel things for people that we don't even know.
Right. I think I empathized with his sense of loss through his parents and that whole sort of, that's very insecure feeling that he felt. But then he became so completely honest and open about it, as a way of almost trying to achieve purity in some way, because he kept searching for this sense of honesty and how to address this loss. Rather than suppressing it, he brought it out and made it public for the world to see. And through that process, I think he actually healed. In many ways.
Yeah, he was actually pretty funny. He was coming through to me as pretty funny. He said that his vision of life was askew, kind of like his eyes. He was telling me one eye, the vision was worse than the other, even though he called himself blind as a bat. He said his vision was askew, kind of like his vision of life, but in kind of like a comical way. And he was also talking about the Isle of Wight.
Yeah.
Loved the warm breezes, and I thought he was saying the Isle of Right, but he kept showing this big W, White. And I did some research afterward, and I found out that there's an art show or an art exhibit of his artwork on the Isle of Wight, and I didn't realize that he did artwork.
He's very well known. Yeah, Yeah, there's many things that he did. He has a whole collection. Actually, all of his individual books that he wrote himself. A man in his own right, and many of a Spaniard in the works. He always graphically illustrated his books with these very comical characters, and then he made them into lithographs. So he has quite a body of work. He's a very talented guy. Very sort of that same sense of wry humor comes through. That sort of cynicism. That he loved to play with words, and he loved that sort of the phonetics of the English language, and he'd always mix up words, and he was very clever with puns and stuff like that. So it certainly resonated. And Isle of Wight was also the scene of a very famous rock festival years ago. It still may be. So it would make sense for him to be in that.
Chris, do you play the guitar?
I don't. I've always wanted to. I sort of live vicariously. I was a musician when I was younger, but I was sort of led to it through my father, and my father sort of pushed me into it. So I sort of, went a different route. I sort of put my energy into words and art rather than into music. Although music has always been it's the one art form I haven't really jumped into, but it's the one art form that is the closest to me, so it's kind of ironic.
It's funny because I pick up, there's a few things I get, this violin, I get this energy of someone playing a violin around you, and the other thing, too, was an accordion. I don't know where that came in, but there's an attachment, I feel, and it has to do with flamenco, the flamenco guitar. Oh, there's that guy, Benicio, I think his name is, who plays the flamenco guitar, and for some reason that's really resonating around you, is that flamenco guitar.
Yeah, well, that there's plenty of pieces about that make perfect sense because music is such an important piece of my personality. I mean, for years I was in the music business, not as a musician, but I was just so heavily involved in something. It's one of my, it's sort of like my lifeblood. It's my oxygen. I have to have it. So it's always been very powerful, which is why John Lennon was such an important figure in my life. So it's not uncommon. My guest today, you're listening to Turning of the Wheel. My guest today is Daria Justyn, and she's a marvelous psychic. And we're going to be taking a quick break. And then after the break, we're going to open up the phone lines, and she's going to be able to do live readings. And we'll sort of do a tag team reading if we can. And we're going to I'm going to do a quick, Daria will do her quick take, and then I'll look at the astrology chart, and we'll see what we can come up with to help you folks. So, Daria, my guest today is Daria Justyn. Her website is www.dariajustyn.com. It's DARIAJUSTYN.com. And her email is souls@dariajustyn.com. She's a remarkably talented woman with a great gift, and I encourage you to check her out. We'll be back in about 2.5 minutes to take some live readings. So give us a call at 1-877-230-3062. And thank you.
Is your chance to be part of the show. Call 877-230-3062. Call in with your questions or thoughts and talk with the host and their guest. Again, that number is 877-230-3062.
What is your destiny? Where are you going? What is your real purpose? Do you know? Do you want to know? Of course you do. It's your duty to yourself. We are all here for a reason, and we all have great potential. Discover all of this and more with a professional astrology reading. My name is Chris Flisher, and I can help you. Discover your strengths and work on your weaknesses, and live your life to its fullest capacity. Based on your birthday, birthplace, and birth time, an authentic astrology reading will allow you to live your life to the fullest and reveal your true purpose. Only real astrology can give you real information. It is your destiny, and it is your path. Write me at chris@chrisflisher.com and book a reading today. Or call me, 978-264-0668. That's 978-264-0668. www.chrisflisher.com. As the world shrinks and our barriers come down, diverse cultures are striving for harmony, balance, and peace. To ease the transition, we need to expand with color, light, and tolerance. Now, you can become a global citizen and embrace the color and clear spirit with the divine artwork of the mandala. Mandalas are a timeless artistic offering for creating unity, harmony, and peace. My name is Chris Flisher, and I've spent years creating mandalas, and they are now available online at www.chrisflisher.com. Come and experience the world of color, form, and function with t-shirts, coffee mugs, note cards, and limited edition prints. These vibrant, lively paintings and products express optimism, oneness, and spiritual balance for all who use them. At www.chrisflisher.com, www.chrisflisher.com, and enter a world of possibility and color.
Did you know that you can rate this show on iTunes? The show you're listening to right now. It's true. You can leave your thoughts about the show, the topic, the guest. You can even leave a suggestion. Then, before you leave, rate the show. The hosts love hearing from you, so next time you download this show from iTunes, leave your thoughts and rate the show for the host and for others.
Okay, everyone, welcome back to Turning of the Wheel. My name is Chris Flisher, and my guest today is Daria Justyn. She's a marvelous, gifted psychic who's going to be doing readings for folks who've called in. Her website is www.dariajustyn.com. It's DARIAJUSTYN.com. And her email is souls@dariajustyn.com. And our first caller we have is Juanita. Juanita's birthday is July 12th, 1956 at 1:25 a.m. in Montague, Massachusetts. Hi, Juanita. Welcome to Turning of the Wheel.
Hi, Juanita. How are you? Good, thank you. So what's your question?
I have to have a question?
Sure. You must have some curiosity about where you're going and where
unless you want Chris to just start with your birthday, because I need to have a question when we're doing such a big on-air thing. There's so much energy around. I need to kind of focus in on you. Okay, here's what I'm getting before you ask a question. Let me just tell you what just popped in from one of your guides, okay? I get this, that you're kind of dragging your feet, that it's kind of like you're standing at a threshold. And you know that you need to go through the threshold, but you're dragging your feet because you're not quite sure when the right time to go is. There's actually I'm not seeing a lot of different opportunities where you have to decide between these opportunities. What I'm getting is that you're dragging your feet, that there's part of your intuition is unclear. You're feeling unclear as to whether you need to move forward with what it is you have planned. And I actually feel like it's some kind of a move because I'm seeing you with a suitcase, so it could be a move that has to do with you moving physically, or it could be like move of a job or moving offices, but I see you with the suitcase. The other thing is that I want to point out about intuition is when your intuition comes to you and tells you something, you really feel it. You become inspired, you feel it in your gut. But when your mind kicks in and starts talking you out of it, I feel like that's where there's some kind of unsureness going on here. And Chris may be able to see what's happening with your chart, that if this is a time where maybe you're not supposed to make a big decision, because I see you standing right at the threshold. Does that make any sense to you?
Yes.
Yeah,
Okay.
It's actually, astrologically, Juanita, you're in a very good time right now because Uranus has just gone direct today. So Uranus has been going retrograde for quite some time. It's right in the cusp of your 12th house. So this is the house of transition. House of transition can mean a new beginning. It can mean the ending. Out of every ending comes a new beginning. So you always have to look at those two as a pair together. You look at endings and beginnings as the same. And you've got Jupiter going through your 12th house too, which is soon going to be coming forward on your ascendant. So it's a marvelous time to be expansive, especially with regard to creativity. You've got Mars conjunct your natal moon in your 5th house, so there's a lot of ambition, a lot of ideas going forward about how to expand. And then Venus and Pluto are both in your 9th house, so it's a time to get back to school, it's a time to travel, it's a time to immerse yourself in something that will allow your creativity to really blossom. So I think that Uranus going direct is going to be sort of like the match at the end of the fuse that gets you going. And I think you've got to have some self-direction here. There is the sense of, we do have free will, And the free will that you can impose upon this is up to you to decide. But I can tell you this much. You've got very good aspects for starting something new, even if it means something comes to an end. So seize that opportunity, carpe diem, and get out there and try to find out what that is. And I think if you operate on that, you'll be very successful.
Yeah, I just want to interject here that I'm seeing your guides standing around applauding you. So whatever it is that you're planning on doing, they're applauding you. So I don't like to say I can guarantee it's going to have a good outcome, but they're applauding your courage to move forward and to do it. Mm-hmm. And there's also this thing about brothers. I get this energy of a lot of brothers. Does that mean anything for you?
2 brothers.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So what Chris and I have just told you, does that resonate with you?
Yeah, yes, it does. It's like I don't know what I want to do.
Okay, but interesting that you mentioned brothers, because that would come up in the house, in the 4th house, the house of families, and where siblings are. And your natal Uranus is at 1 degree Leo, which is going to be an exact trine to where transiting Uranus is coming through now. So you don't be surprised if you haven't heard from your brothers over the last couple time, or they're sort of out of touch with you. Don't be surprised if you get some sort of familial connection there happening, because this would be a time when that would be triggered. It could easily happen. Does that make sense? Have you been out of touch with them?
Somewhat.
Mm-hmm.
One I stay in touch with more than the other.
Yeah, so it may be that the one that you're not in touch with suddenly comes into your time. With regards to with the eclipse that's happening today, your natal Venus is at 22 degrees Gemini in your 2nd house. So Venus typically is a very benevolent planet, and being in your 2nd house could indicate some sort of income of some kind. So this is something that you want to look for over the next 6 months. So whatever you do manifest, it could involve money of some kind, and so you've got some very positive aspects there. You do have to be the initiator behind this. So,
Mm-hmm.
knowing this background information,
Mm-hmm.
you have to act on it. You can't just wait for it to fall into your lap. You've got to take some sort of premeditated action on your part. So you've got the time.
And I just want to give you some tools.
Yes.
The best way that you can get in touch with yourself is to do some meditation, and it can be very simple. You simply sit down, take a deep breath, surround yourself with white light, imagine yourself in the most beautiful place you can think of. When a thought intrudes, push it away. Because when you meditate every day, try to do it at the same time. I don't care if it takes 3 months. Just meditate and pray every day, because that's going to connect you to your intuition. You will then be inspired, and when you are inspired, you'll know what to do. Because I feel like there's a lot of distraction. I feel like there's other people telling you what to do, or you don't want to disappoint them, but you really need to get in touch with your feelings. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you, Juanita. That's great.
Thank you.
I think she's got great aspects. But I think that point is that, we do have, the table is set for us, but we have to show up at the table. And if we don't show up at the table, then we're not going to be able to enjoy the fruits of the harvest.
Mm-hmm.
Our next caller is Lolita, and her birthday is December 19th. Very close. Your birthday's coming up, 1976, 9:22 a.m. in San Diego, California. Hi, Lolita.
Hi.
Thank you for calling. What's your question for Daria?
First of all, I want to thank you for taking my call, and I've always wanted to have a reading from a psychic, and I have been watching the psychic shows, and it's recently just made me want to have a reading. So, but my question is that I'm curious about some ancestors of mine that passed away, especially these are my grandmothers. They both passed away before I was born, and I guess I would like to have a feeling or sense of validation or knowledge that they've maybe been in my life, just because it's been kind of a rough one.
Okay.
And
so let me. Okay. Thank you. Let me just bring up a few things here. Oftentimes, loved ones who have crossed over that we never met in our lifetime are still figure significantly in our soul evolution, because when we incarnate, we choose a core soul group to incarnate with, and sometimes we're here at different times, and sometimes we're here together. But before you were born and they were here, you were help guiding them from the other side, and now the situation is reversed. There's 2, I want to say, initials that I get around you, a big A, letter A as in Ann, and then there's also a J, okay? J like Jane. But what's interesting to me is that I'm getting this energy of the Puritans, like a puritanical energy. They're making me think of the Pilgrims and landing and coming over on the Mayflower, and I'm picking up this whole connection to and I feel like this might be a past life for you. Struggling, it's like a life of struggle. I feel like this is a theme that you may have carried on. I know you were asking about your aunts, your grandmothers, but if they want to come through, that's up to them. But this thing I'm picking up for you, this energy is the struggle of survival, being in the survival mode and struggling. And I feel like you've kind of carried this theme over into this lifetime, and also the sense of aloneness, of feeling alone. But what I ask you to do is embrace all of the energy around you, whether or not you have known them. So usually I ask for specific instances, and if they weren't alive when you were born, the best that I can do is just let you know that they are imbuing you with their energy and surrounding you. And also the self-respect comes up, a big issue about self-respect. The more self-respect you have for yourself and the more you love yourself, the more you will attract that energy to you.
Okay.
Because we are not meant to live in a struggle, okay? Here we are at the end of these times. As Chris was saying, one door closes. We're in 2011 coming into 2012. We're closing a door on the end of what I call the dark ages, and we're coming into the golden age. So what is happening now? Everyone's karma is coming to a head. Anything that you have come into to complete, and karma is merely a system of checks and balances. You are here to complete it. So if you feel like you're being overwhelmed, it's because now is the time to love yourself, to live in joy, to have self-respect, and to know you can let go of the struggle, because what you need will come to you effortlessly if you just ask for it. Okay.
It's fascinating because you've got
That's
interesting, that is great. You've got very interesting aspects with regard to your astrology, too. You've got Pluto in your 8th house. I always look to Pluto because it's got a very strong karmic connection. So picking up on what Daria said, that 8th house is very strong because it does force you to delve into your past. It is about genealogy. It is about where you came from. And those roots are very strong because you are a composite of those two grandmothers, believe it or not. There's something about the DNA that is embedded, that is transferred directly through your parents into you. So you are a direct link to them. And so the energy that you're picking up from them is very profound. You know, you would make a great counselor if you could get into that business. Perhaps you already are. You've got Neptune and the moon in your 10th house, very powerfully aspected right now. And for you, the eclipse is happening right at the edge of your 4th house, where the moon is right now. 4th house is the house of family. So the fact that you're getting this familial connection and this thread from your grandparents coming through to you right now is actually pretty profound, because it certainly has that, emotional energy attached to it. It's very profound. So I would pay attention, when Daria was mentioning to the first person who called about meditation. Another thing I also recommend is the idea of journaling, because journaling is a sort of a visceral, tangible kind of meditation. If you just do automatic writing where you just spill the words out in the paper, sometimes people have a difficult time sitting still for meditation. So if you actually are writing and the words are coming out, it can have the same effect, and you might pick up some information from that. But I think it's great. It's really funny how it's not funny. It's this is how it's supposed to be, but the aspects of the astrology chart really do map in directly to what Daria has mentioned.
Mm-hmm.
So thank you so much for calling. It's great. Very good.
Thank you.
You're very welcome.
Yeah,
that's great.
Chris, because it's all energy. It's all. What we're doing is we're just connecting with energy.
Yes,
it's
absolutely.
just different ways of looking through energy through different lenses. That's what I think.
Yeah, I use that analogy all the time. People come to me and they come to me as they come to you in times of trial, and I always say to them, look, you're looking through a prism of some sort, and you have a giant prism. You have the prism in your hand, and you're looking through that, and you're seeing a wide array of colors of different kinds in that prism. If you were to turn that prism just 1 degree in either direction, everything would look different. And when you do that, all you're doing is you're just shifting your perspective, and it's how we look at things makes things either palatable or unpleasant. So we have to find that common ground. And when you get to that spot where things are palatable, everything shifts, and it can be a remarkably liberating experience.
Right, and even when things come up that we don't want to look at, when things, whenever we act through fear, that is such a block. Things that we're afraid of or things we don't want to look at or things we sweep under the rug. By doing that, they just escalate. They just gain more momentum because we keep putting energy to it and we put so much energy into not wanting to look at it that it just blows up like this big balloon.
It sure does.
So once you look at it, you face it, you have the information, then that dissipates and you're able to move through. The other thing I wanted to mention, too, as with astrology and with readings, when people call in with a question, you get a little snapshot. In order to really delve into it, you need the whole reading. And it's like with astrology, the difference when people say, okay, what's my horoscope for today? And when they call you and get their whole chart done, you get the big picture.
Well, you get an extended map of of the potential, where the activity is going to be happening, in which part of your life. All those things are very relevant as far as how that works. But when you mentioned that the concept of drawing to you what that sort of that if you do live in fear, you do feed on it. That's very accurate. I mean, it really does sort of. It's a self-perpetuating kind of thing, and if you live in that realm, it's going to escalate, and it's so accurate. That is fascinating, actually. I just really very profound what you just said. Our next caller is Joanne, and her birthday is April 16th, 1956, at 11:03 a.m. in North Plainfield, New Jersey. Thank you, Joanne, for calling in. Do you have a question for Daria?
Thank you. Yes, I am listening to this and just loving it. I have to tell you.
That's great. That's wonderful.
So actually, for both of you, yes. Right now, I'm living with my parents. My mom's soul is getting ready for the next. What can I say? The next
transition. Getting ready for transition.
Right. And I'm kind of on hold. I have a relationship in Colorado with a male friend that's very tough, right? And all I've ever wanted to do was work with spirit, and I am connected to them.
I'm sorry, work with what?
Spirit.
Okay. All right, so let me tell you what I'm picking up for you, Joanne.
Okay, great.
Okay. That you are in the caretaker, you are definitely in the, I want to say you've stepped into the river, the flow of caretaking. And this is once again, I find themes come up during shows, and this to me feels very karmic. It feels that karmically that's what you are meant to be doing, that it's not where you're going to take your mom and, stick her somewhere and pay no attention. It feels very karmically that you are in the role of caretaker. There's also a question of boundaries here. It's really important for you to maintain boundaries for yourself because you don't want to give so much to others that there's nothing left for you. I use the analogy of a battery because when the battery is drained, you need to recharge yourself. Because the more you love yourself, the more self-love you have, the more that trickles down to everyone else. But I do see you in this role right now of caretaker, and I feel like this is something that is actually, I feel like every time you want to do something or step forward, it's like, oh my gosh, you're drawn into this role again. You're drawn into this role again. And I feel like this is the lifetime that you're finishing this up. That when your mom does transition, it's really important for you to now say, now I'm taking time for me and really pay attention to you. Because I feel like there's going to be 3 opportunities that come up for you. One of them involves travel, but the other 2 feel like they are where you are. There's also, I get someone named Kathy or Catherine, Kathleen around you, and I get a connection to the month of July. Any of that mean anything for you?
Okay, it will, I'm sure.
Okay.
Yeah. Interesting you mentioned July because she does have her Uranus is at 28 degrees Cancer, which is in the month of July. Interestingly enough, some of the things that Daria picked up on really do come through. You have Saturn transiting your 4th house, conjunct your natal Neptune. The 4th house would be about family. And then you've got Pluto going through your 6th house. And 6th house is about service. It's about health. So it really is this whole connection between family and health and your responsibility. There is a duty there to do this. And it's a good duty to do this because you think of it, in terms of that cyclical motion of, the mother raised you, took care of you, nurtured you, brought you, and now you returning the favor in some ways by nurturing her. It's one of these things that you sort of, it's a very cyclical, and it's beautiful in that regard because there's such harmony and natural rhythm to it as well. It's very much of a, sort of this repetitive pattern of the child is the father of the man, so to speak. It's that same theme of, recurring and returning back to that spot. So this is just a time when, rather than resisting it, you need to embrace it and experience it. And if you can find the joy in this sort of opportunity that you have, because it is in there somewhere, then you're going to be much happier as a result. With regard to the eclipse, which is happening today, you've got it in your 11th house. So anytime that you can use your experiences with your mother to reach out to an organization or get help from an organization, it'll serve you very well. You've got natal Venus at 12 degrees Gemini, and it does have that ability for you to be a great player, a team player, and you're going to get great support from that sort of a safety net. If you can find that in your life or if you've already got it, really play that up and reach out to them because they're going to be sort of your vent. You may be frustrated by the aspects of what your mother's going through, and you may be frustrated by the good days and the bad days. It's your associations with, groups that you belong to, whether it's a healing group, a yoga group, or even business associates are all going to be good people for you to vent to. You do have really good aspects in your 10th house too. So with regard to your career or whatever you're doing for work, you've got Jupiter in your 10th house. So you should be doing okay there.
The other thing I want to add, too, about your connection to the spirits, the spirit world, is that people tend to think there has to be this big revelation. And, I use this phrase, people are looking for fireworks when they should be looking for fireflies. One of the most important tools we have to connect with the higher realms or the higher vibrations or our higher consciousness are our daydreams. When you find yourself daydreaming, pay attention. You leave your body for an instant, and then you become inspired, or you receive acknowledgement, or you receive communications. And it's not like they have to be Moses comes down with a tablet or the branch goes on fire, okay? It is simply the wall drops, you connect to that open channel, and you are there. So it's the little things I want you to pay attention to and the little messages that I want you to pay attention to because that's when you are making connections, okay?
Yeah, okay. Thank you so much for saying that because I come across that so much in my readings with people. They often think that the astrology chart holds some sort of, Moses on the mountain tablet kind of thing. And it's not that. It really isn't. Sometimes, I don't know if that's our own sense of self-importance, but the simplicity is really where the magic lies. It really is in those small, little tucked-away clues where the real magic is. So if we start looking for this bolt of lightning to come out or the sky to open up, I think we're foolish. So I'm glad you brought that up, Daria. It's really important. And that's true probably for all people in this type of counseling. People always think that there's something grander there. And it is really the small pieces. My guest today has been the wonderful Daria Justyn. Her website is www.dariajustyn.com. And it's a wonderful site. She has written a book called Angels Whisper to Us, Decoding the Messages in Our Daydreams. And she can be reached at souls@dariajustyn.com. And I think it's important to reach out to people like Daria because there's such, her integrity and authenticity is so genuine. You get this real sense of familiarity. And when you get that familiarity, it's just, you get goosebumps up your back because you know that there's this connection that's coming through that's working. So, Daria, it's been great having you on. Do you have any final words to say? We got about a minute left.
Thank you so much, Chris. I so appreciate it. And you're right. We really are all connected, and all of us have abilities. We all have gifts. It's just a question of how we shine them up. And reaching out to people who are put in your path, the way you were put in my path. And we obviously have this great camaraderie on the air because we connect to that higher consciousness, and also because I feel I am here as a messenger. I am here. I know I am here. This is my purpose in life. Nothing gives me more joy than to help others, and it just makes me insane with joy to know that I can do this, and that's why I'm here. And when I can meet people like you who also want to help people, and so that we can all help each other, then, as I said before, we are in a momentous occasion for humanity, and every soul on earth is here because they chose to be here at this time.
That's great. So we got to wrap it up, and I thank you so much, Daria. I appreciate it so much. go. Thank you so much, folks. See you next week.
You've been listening to Turning of the Wheel with your host, Chris Flisher. To schedule a reading with me or to order artwork, you may visit my website at www.turningofthewheel.com. That's www.turningofthewheel.com. Or you can call me at 978-393-1036. Thank you. And as always, be open to possibilities.